Hello there and good evening. I'm Kareem Zachary and you're watching World News Program on All 24 News Channel live from the capital Algiers. Next up are the top stories. In Gaza, Hamas confirms the release of 48 Zionist prisoners starting on Monday. Displaced Palestinians are struggling to come to terms with the devastation left behind by the aggression on Gaza as the occupation continues to block the flow of humanitarian aid through border crossings. Coming up next, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune reaffirms his commitment to building an independent and impartial justice system that upholds the rule of law. The army, for its part, underscores its full readiness to counter any threats, adopting a solid defense strategy and broad modernization plans. Also in our news, the Polisario Front reiterates its rejection of any colonial fait accompli and foreign interference that violates international legitimacy. It says the proposed self-government plan is a Paris-made blueprint aimed at prolonging the conflict. All this and more shortly. Welcome back to the program. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, Osama Hamdan, a senior Hamas official, said the prisoner swap with the occupation will kick off on Monday, with the group set to release 48 Zionist prisoners. He told AFP news agency on Saturday that 5 crossings are expected to open for humanitarian aid as part of the deal, adding that the Rafah crossing with Egypt will reopen in both directions for Palestinians starting Wednesday. In a similar note, the Zionist occupation forces stormed the homes of Palestinian prisoners in the occupied West Bank early Sunday, just hours before their expected release under the prisoner swap deal. The Palestinian Information Center said troops threatened families, banned celebrations and the raising of Palestinian flags, and arrested 8 people in Ramallah for taking part in pre-release festivities. And after the Gaza ceasefire took effect Friday and thousands of displaced people returned north, a key step is set for Monday morning: the release of Palestinian prisoners in exchange for Zionist captives under a U.S. broker deal. More details with Yassine Rikti now.
More than 2,000 Palestinian prisoners held in Zionist jails, whose names were made public on Friday, are expected to be released before 11 a.m. today in exchange for the 48 captives and remains of Zionists killed during the war in Gaza, marking the first step in a ceasefire agreement concluded under U.S. mediation. They were held in several facilities, including Offer Prison, where buses lined up to transfer them. This comes after 2 years of relentless bombardment, blockade and persecution.
I swear to God, the 34 years have been extremely difficult, very hard. Even though many prisoner exchange deals were made over the years, they were always excluded. But thanks to God, today He was willed their release, and we are truly happy and grateful for that.
While the move has sparked relief and hope among Palestinians, it's also raised serious concerns about the conditions and destinations of those released.
The joy is immense and overwhelming, but at the same time, we cannot fully trust the credibility of what's happening until it's absolutely certain. In the past deals, we were told they would be released, and we prepared to welcome them, but it didn't happen. That's why we only hope this time they will truly be included in the deal, them and the rest of the prisoners.
Palestinians remain cautious, recalling past ceasefires that collapsed due to the entity's violations. Analysts say Netanyahu, facing political turmoil, an international arrest warrant and mounting global pressure, is stalling peace efforts in a bid to stay afloat.
We have been waiting for so long. My parents passed away while he was in prison. He would always say, I wish I could get out of prison and see my mother and father. Thank God, Israel is think that the joy is displayed, but it is merely in our hearts. Happiness is not about how you reveal it. We are waiting impatiently for this day. Thank God, no matter what Israelis do, we are happy and our hearts are happy too.
For many Palestinians, though the release of thousands of detainees carries more than just relief, it's a rare flicker of hope, a symbolic first step toward breaking the cycle of occupation and bloodshed that has defined their lives for decades.
Meanwhile, the Palestinian Civil Defense says it's recovered 15 bodies south of Wadi Gaza, with rescue crews still searching the area. Health officials report 124 bodies and 48 wounded brought to hospitals in the past 24 hours alone. The death toll from the war has now topped 67,800, with many still missing under the rubble. And for the third day in a row, thousands of displaced Palestinians are heading back to their homes in Gaza, only to find scenes of massive destruction. The Palestinian Information Center says people are returning through Rashid and Salahuddin streets, while movement in eastern neighborhoods remains difficult due to the widespread damage and lack of basic services.
We're only happy that the war has ended. As for our return, we are going back to destruction, to a demolished house, to a tragedy. But we are happy that the genocide is over, the war is over, the tragedy is over. We are very happy for this, but for the homes, we are going back to a demolished house. We will build a tent on top of it. May God ease things on everyone.
Destruction, destruction, what can we do? The important thing is for the war to stop, for the shooting to stop, for the death to stop, for the death of children, young people and women to stop.
And in another development, the first trucks carrying aid rolled into Gaza on Sunday through the Karam Abu Salim and Al Auja crossings, marking the start of humanitarian deliveries under the new ceasefire. Palestinian media showed a small convoy moving through Khan Yunis as hospitals pleaded for urgent medical supplies to deal with the dire health crisis. For example, Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis announced the death of 12-year-old Huda Abu Najah from famine and malnutrition, highlighting the worsening situation caused by the ongoing blockade and shortage of food and medicine. And in occupied Palestine, dozens of Zionist settlers stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque on Sunday morning under heavy protection from occupation forces. The Islamic Endowments Department in occupied Al-Quds said the settlers held provocative tours in the mosque's courtyards, performed Talmudic rituals in Barak Square, and carried vegetable offerings to mark the so-called Feast of Tabernacles. Palestinian worshippers were barred from entering the mosque, however.
نحن زي ما انتم مشاهدين يعني اليوم الأحد 5 أيام ولا 6 أيام ما يسمى عيد العرش.
As you can see, this is the 5th or 6th day of the Feast of Booths. Al-Aqsa Mosque is being stormed by settlers in large numbers under the protection of occupation forces who shield them as they break into the compound. Numerous Zionist settlers enter the mosque and desecrate it, performing dances inside its courtyards and reciting Talmudic prayers while deliberately provoking residents of the old city.
And in global reaction, tens of thousands of people rallied in Sydney on Sunday in support of Palestine, joining dozens of similar demonstrations across Australia. Many protesters voiced doubt that the new ceasefire would last, citing 2 years of what they described as genocide in Gaza. The details with Zara Ferjani now.
In Sydney, London, Berlin, Vienna, and across the Netherlands, pro-Palestinian demonstrations have continued following the implementation of the ceasefire in Gaza, wherein Kayfiyes waving Palestinian flags and carrying banners, protesters took to the streets to demand justice for Palestinians and to denounce the Zionist occupation.
So-called ceasefire will not hold. Israel always breaks every ceasefire they've ever done. For 78 years, they've been conducting an illegal occupation in Palestinian territories, and we demand the Australian government sanction sanction Israel.
Many question marks over the 20 points that Donald Trump and others have put forward, many of which are very disturbing. But if there's no bombs falling and nobody being killed, then that is, of course, a step forward. But a long-term peace requires the Palestinian people to be involved in deciding their future.
In Maastricht, the Netherlands, thousands of children's shoes were placed on the city square on Saturday to honor the Palestinian children killed in Gaza. Participants also held portraits of young victims and journalists who lost their lives there.
And these shoes are representing children who were murdered in Gaza in the last 2 years. We also have signs with the journalists who were murdered, over 300 names and faces and stories of people who were doing their work, telling the truth about the reality on the ground in Gaza when international journalists were not allowed to come inside.
Though relieved by the ceasefire, many pro-Palestinian demonstrators remain deeply skeptical about what lies ahead. Their determination to continue advocating for Palestinian rights, however, shows no sign of wavering.
Elsewhere in the Middle East, Egypt is gearing up to host a high-profile summit in Sharm el-Sheikh today, bringing together over 20 world leaders, including U.S. President Donald Trump. The meeting aims to push for an end to the war in Gaza and boost regional peace and security efforts. Qatar's news agency says 3 Qatari diplomats were killed and others injured in a traffic accident on Saturday evening while heading to the Sharm el-Sheikh summit. The Qatari embassy in Cairo is working with Egyptian authorities to investigate the incident. The victims were employees of the Amiri Diwan. And on this ordeal, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has extended his heartfelt condolences to the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, over the deaths of 3 diplomats from the Amiri Diwan and the injury of others in a traffic accident in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. In a message published by the Algerian presidency, President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune described the tragedy as painful, praying for mercy upon the victims and wishing a swift recovery for the injured. Still with the president's activities, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune oversaw the opening of the judicial year on Sunday at the Supreme Court in the capital Algiers in the presence of senior state and government officials. The ceremony began with Quranic verses and the national anthem. In his speech, President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune announced that the basic law on the judiciary will be issued before the end of the year. He stressed that the move reflects his commitment to supporting the justice sector and enhancing the quality, transparency, and efficiency of judicial work.
أعدكم في النهاية أني سأفرج عن القانون الأساسي للقضاة قبل نهاية السنة. وأعلن رسميا عن افتتاح السنة القضائية 2025-2026. وفقكم الله ووفقنا وإياكم.
On the same occasion, President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune reaffirmed his commitment to ensuring independent and impartial justice that reflects the rule of law. He pledged to provide all necessary resources to achieve this goal and emphasized the importance of strengthening the separation between commercial and criminal courts to improve the efficiency and transparency of the judicial system. Let's take a listen.
نحاول بقدر الاستطاعة باش نتجاوزها في إطار إنشاء اقتصاد حر، اقتصاد مدر للثروة ولمناصب الشغل لأبنائنا المتخرجين وغيرهم. إذن الشيء اللي نأسف عليه هو أن القطاع الاقتصادي حر بنسبة 85% فما أكثر ربما، ولكن التمويل عمومي، وهذا اللي يخلي القاضي ومصالح الأمن دائما تتدخل في كل عملية ولو في قطاع حر، ولكن ما دام المال مال الدولة لازم الرقابة نتاعو. إذا لازم نصيب صيغ اللي تخلي الأمور التجارية تبقى تجارية، والجنح والجنايات تبقى جنح وجنايات. صعب يعني تحديد أمور بينهما، ولكن لازم نسعى إلى اجتهاد، لازم نكثف هذه المحاكم.
Still with Algeria-related news, the Algerian army reaffirmed its full readiness to confront any challenges and counter all threats to the country, regardless of their nature or source. In an editorial published in its special October issue, the Army's Gazette highlighted the achievements of the military institution as a clear reflection of its unwavering commitment to defending Algeria. It stressed that the Army stands as an impregnable shield against any attempt to undermine the nation's security, stability, or safety of its people.
With a keen sense of national duty and deep awareness of the various challenges to be met, the People's National Army continues with resolve and determination to assume its noble responsibilities in the defense of our homeland and the reinforcement of its sovereignty and independence, thereby justly proving its readiness and professionalism and effectiveness in the accomplishment of its noble missions. Its personnel are always prepared to meet all challenges and confront all threats, regardless of their nature and source, with the sole objective of establishing security and consolidating factors of peacefulness in our regions of our beloved country. The achievement of the People's National Army reflects its commitment and readiness to stand as an impregnable rampart against anyone attempting to undermine the security and the stability of our nation and the sovereignty of our people, in accordance with the solemn pledge it undertook to safeguard the message of our valiant ancestors and preserve their invaluable legacy.
The Gazette's editorial reaffirmed the Army's commitment to pushing ahead with its modernization and development plans, guided by a solid defense strategy built on comprehensive, well-thought-out approaches. The strategy, it said, takes into account Algeria's internal capabilities while keeping pace with global shifts. The October issue also praised the significant progress and qualitative leaps Algeria has achieved across multiple sectors, describing it as part of an ambitious path moving firmly in the right direction.
Our National People's Army, more determined than ever to keep pace with development in the field of defense and security, is relentlessly continuing the path of modernization and development, along which it has made significant strides, adapting to the requirement of the current phase with its security, technological and developmental challenges. Through a solid defense strategy based on a well-thought-out and comprehensive approach across various fields, taking into account our own capabilities and keeping pace with the transformations taking place in the world, accompanying the Renaissance project that the new Algeria, victorious on all fronts, is embarking on with determination and resolve.
To other regional news now, the Polisario Front says the Sahrawi people won't accept Morocco's colonial reality and will keep fighting for their right to self-determination. Speaking in New York, the Polisario's UN representative called the decades-long occupation a real test for the UN, stressing that the only solution is to let the Sahrawis freely decide their future. 50 years ago, the Sahrawi people marked a turning point with the Ain Bentili Congress, uniting their forces around freedom, self-determination and independence for Western Sahara. Today, Algiers' Mufti Zakaria Palace of Culture hosted celebrations for the 50th anniversary of this historic national unity. More details with Salman Asib now.
50 years ago, on October 12, 1975, Sahrawi national unity was sealed. Since that historic day, the Sahrawi people have been united under the same banner, the Polisario Front. It was a decisive moment in the history of the people of Western Sahara, marked by the determination to end tribal divisions and unite all components of the Sahrawi people around a common ideal, freedom and self-determination. Today, this unity, still led by the Polisario Front and embodied in solid institutions, remains the foundation of the Sahrawi resistance, fueled by an unbreakable spirit passed down from generation to generation. At the Mufti Zakaria Palace of Culture in Algiers, the 50th anniversary of Sahrawi national unity was solemnly celebrated, recalling the importance of this major milestone in the history and struggle of the Sahrawi people. In the face of repeated attempts by the Moroccan occupier to undermine this cohesion, through means ranging from brutal repression, arbitrary arrests, human rights violations, to physical and psychological torture, the Sahrawi people remain unshaken.
اليوم تمر 50 سنة على ذلك الحدث التاريخي.
Today we commemorate the 50th anniversary of this historic event, national unity, under the leadership of the Polisario Front and within the framework of the solid institutions of Western Sahara, remains strong and preserved, animated by the same spirit as in the early days, an unbreakable, unwavering spirit whose flame does not extinguish and whose brightness never fades. It is passed down from generation to generation, despite all the attempts to break it, attempts to which the Moroccan occupying state has devoted all its experience in brutality and repression, as well as all its ingenuity in the art of blackmail, in order to influence positions, conduct psychological warfare, and undermine the will and determination of the Sahrawi people.
These deep sufferings, endured over decades, have only strengthened the determination and will of a people thirstily defending their identity and their right to decide their own future.
الشعب الصحراوي لن يتنازل عن حقه المشروع.
The Sahrawi people will never renounce their legitimate right to self-determination and independence. They cannot accept that occupation be imposed upon them as a fait accompli, regardless of the justification put forward. No attempt to bypass the principles of international law and legality, which clearly define the Sahrawi question as a decolonization issue, has succeeded. No attempt will ever succeed in challenging the inalienable, imprescriptible and non-transferable right of our people to decide their own destiny, just as previous efforts through iron and fire have also failed.
The Sahrawi issue is recognized by the international community as a matter of decolonization, and this inalienable and imprescriptible right remains at the heart of the Sahrawi claim. Nothing can extinguish it. No force or violence have ever succeeded in doing so in the past. 50 years of history, struggle, and unity. 50 years on, the message remains the same. Unity is the strength of the Sahrawi people, and their commitment to freedom remains unshaken.
Elsewhere in Africa, Sudanese military sources say the army has foiled an infiltration attempt by RSF fighters in North Kordofan and captured several of them. The Sudan Shield Forces added that the gallows men tried to sneak in from a key point in the north, but were stopped. The move is part of the army's push to secure Khartoum and recently reclaimed areas. In the same context, Sudan's foreign ministry has urged the UN and Security Council to step in and lift the siege on al-Fashir by enforcing resolutions from 27 to and including 36 of 2024. In a statement, Khartoum condemned what it called the world silence over genocide by the RSF in North Darfur. It also called for real action to cut off weapons and mercenaries to the RSF and hold its leaders accountable. And now it's time to catch up on other news stories making headlines in the News in Brief.
Afghanistan's Ministry of Defense announced the end of the military operations along the border with Pakistan. Defense Ministry spokesman said Saturday that the operations were in response to repeat violations and airstrikes by the Pakistani army on Afghan territory, warning that Afghan forces are ready to respond firmly to any future attacks.
China voiced strong opposition to the latest U.S. decision to add several Chinese entities to its export control list, urging Washington to immediately reverse what it called wrongful measures.
the administration of US President Donald Trump has reversed a planned decision to impose sanctions on American liquefied natural gas companies that were set to take effect next week. In a notice issued earlier this week, the Office of the US Trade Representative said the move aims to avoid any potential short-term disruptions in the liquefied natural gas sector.
Supporters of Norway's national football team raised Palestinian flags during their game against the Zionist entity at Oslo Stadium on Saturday, part of the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. Hundreds of pro-Palestine demonstrators had gathered earlier outside the Norwegian parliament, calling for the Zionist entity's exclusion from all sporting events over its war crimes in Gaza.
And that's the end of our news for tonight. Thank you for tuning into our channel, and goodbye.